is this part of me that can be very lazy, and I wonder just how much work I can make ChatGPT and Midjourney do for me. Instead of using my own terrible ideas, I wanted the AI to do all of the work for me, including the game concept. I mean, sure, I knew it could create a game design, but could it really grasp the context of the project and produce something simple enough yet engaging? So I asked ChatGPT to conjure up an idea for a basic, simple, and unique 2D game that would run on HTML, JavaScript, and Canvas. And this is what it came up with: Starcatcher, a simple and unique 2D game developed using HTML, JavaScript, and Canvas. The game's primary objective is to collect falling stars while avoiding obstacles. It's easy to pick up and play, providing a fun experience for players of all ages. I mean, the idea seems straightforward enough, right? But with ChatGPT whipping up a list of gameplay concepts and features such as customizable characters, avoiding obstacles, losing lives, and scoring, part of me really began to wonder if this was going to be possible. Players would be maneuvering a ship across the bottom of the screen as objects rained down from above. The game would crank up the difficulty the longer the player stayed alive, because, screw them. And while objects continued to hurtle faster and faster, the player would ultimately meet their doom in the face of relentless celestial onslaught. But that's it. That's the challenge. I was about to attempt to bring this AI-generated monstrosity to life and create a simple gaming experience that would make me wonder if, as a programmer, was I about to become obsolete? Like most new games, I wanted to start by getting something on the screen. So I used ChatGPT to set up some basic HTML and JavaScript files, hide those pesky scroll bars, jazz up the background colors a bit, and make sure everything loaded in the right order. For Starcatcher, I wanted to use Pixie.js because it's a very simple to use 2D framework for games. As the code started coming together, I was amazed to see that ChatGPT actually knew what it was doing. It came up with this pretty basic example of a spinning image using a broken imager link, but nobody's perfect. And while there was a part of me that was seriously impressed, I was also a bit intimidated. The basic app was ready to go, and it was time to tackle the game states. The game states were going to help manage the transition between the menu and the actual gameplay, so I let ChatGPT work its magic and generate the code that I needed. But I ended up with an error because I accidentally copied some of the extra text after the code had been generated, but that was my bad. To be perfectly honest with you, I was actually shocked here. We now had a smooth navigation between our game and menu states that was all created from AI. I could see that the code was going to get a bit messy, so I thought it was time for some housekeeping. I split up the menu and game state logics and renamed a lot of the files just to get a better organization for our project. Because we weren't using classes just yet, we had a lot of duplicate variable names declared globally between the files, and I ran into some errors that required me to spend some time cleaning it up. But with everything working again, we were now rocking multiple files. For some reason, ChatGPT decided on a whim to change my background colors to red and blue. I'm not quite sure why, maybe it was feeling a bit patriotic, but, it was a very easy change to get back to the original. Despite all of that, we were still making progress. Honestly, I didn't even know if we were going to be able to create something resembling a game when we started this project. I knew this project was going to be complex, but honestly, ChatGPT just keeps blowing my mind. The fear I have, though, is that I'm starting to wonder how much of my own programming skills are going to be required, and was ChatGPT going to keep up? The game right now looks incredibly dull. It was time to use Midjourney to create some fancy graphics to add to our game. The types of fancy graphics that make the game worth playing and not look like something that was made from someone who still uses Microsoft Paint with a trackball mouse from the 90s. Yeah, we needed an upgrade. So first, we tackled the logo. I had Midjourney create a logo that put on the menu state and got something that looks, kind of like a logo. The text is a bit wonky, but hey, it's unique, right? I think I'll just pass it off as an alien language. I encountered an error trying to add the logo into the game. A classic issue that most JavaScript developers would be familiar with is when your code tries to access files locally on the computer. It doesn't like that. So since I had Node.js installed, I decided to use npx-serve to create a local static web host. The logo was finally on the menu, but it needed some adjustments, obviously. So I had ChatGPT scale down the image and change the overall menu's background color to match. But the menu just wasn't spicy enough yet. I told the AI bot to come up with an animated warping background effect using only primitive shapes. My initial thought was having stars shooting from the center of the screen, but what it came up with I actually liked better. ChatGPT had come up with this impressive background that makes you feel like you're traveling through stars, or at the very least, a sci-fi screensaver. I tinkered with the opacities and speeds that the stars were moving, and I ended up with this amazing effect. After I fixed up a few things that broke on the menu while implementing these new features, I was eager to get the game itself ready. So, using Midjourney again, I had it create a background image, and through several variations, we ended up with this amazing graphic. Once we had the image in place, it was time to throw it into the game scene itself. We had to adjust the overall background color of the game stage and resize the image to fit properly on the screen, just like we did on the menu. And now that that's in place, the game is really starting to look like it's coming together. In Star Catcher, we needed our brave little player to control a ship at the bottom of the screen, catching falling objects like stars or asteroids. Our next goal was to get the player's ship on the screen and moving around with keyboard input. For now, we decided to represent the player as a simple green triangle, because who doesn't want to be a moldy Dorito cruising through the cosmos? But our trusty AI buddy hit a snag. I'd been using the same chat session for so long that it couldn't generate all the text I needed. It was time for ChatGPT to go through a fresh start and reteach it everything about the game we were creating, kind of like a cosmic reboot. I fed it back the original game design document as well as all of the files it had previously generated. Once I had ChatGPT back in action, it was time to tackle the behemoth JavaScript files. Instead of going down the path of creating spaghetti code, I decided to break down the game and menu states into individual classes that could be created and destroyed from the main application. This was going to help with a lot of things like death and reset logic, as well as just compartmentalizing all of the data and variables going on. With ChatGPT and I working in perfect harmony, we managed to get the code we needed, and we were finally ready to start working on the player. Getting the player on the screen and moving turned out to be more challenging than trying to explain rocket science to a toddler. Eventually, I threw in the towel on starting with a simple triangle shape and went straight for creating the final player graphic. I asked Midjourney to imagine a sprite sheet for the exact art piece I needed. With my trusty Photoshop skills, I isolated the part of the graphic I wanted and gave it a transparent background because, let's face it, nobody wants a floating rectangle haunting their screen. While trying to load the sprite into the game, I stumbled upon more issues than I'd bargained for. The trickiest problem? Loading all of the graphics at just the right time when the game starts up. This isn't an uncommon issue to deal with when creating games, so I had the AI create a loader class to handle getting all of the assets into memory before the game displayed anything. After several tweaks from yours truly, we managed to get a working loader class. I wanted the player to move using the A and D keys and the left and right arrows, but making that happen was about as frustrating as trying to teach a cat how to tap dance. But after many revisions, the player finally moved. All we needed to do now was just make sure it stayed within the boundaries of the background image, because nobody wants their spaceship zooming off into oblivion. Again, some of the logic created wasn't entirely accurate, which led to a spaceship that bounced near the edges of the screen. But with a bit of manual tweaking, I fixed it, and I was ready to boldly go on to the next feature. It was around this time in the project that I had an epiphany. We were actually going to make this happen. If I could get ChatGPT to create a game and menu states as well as the player on screen and moving, then there was no reason it couldn't tackle everything else that I wanted. It's like trying to understand a foreign language. It suddenly all clicks. I began to understand how to better form my prompts and goals and guide the AI to focus specifically on what I wanted. The core gameplay was finally nailed down, and it was time to tackle the fun stuff. I told Midjourney to create some stellar asteroid and star sprite sheets and had ChatGPT whip up a falling object class to randomly load the stars and asteroids into the game. Ensuring these objects fell from the top of the screen and stayed within the play area turned out to be a piece of cake. And for some extra flair, I made it spin. But instead of cramming all that spinning logic into the game state class, we gave the falling objects their own update function to handle their fancy dance moves. I made the object spin the sprite rather than the pixie container because it would simplify collision detection between the ship and the falling objects later on. With the falling object class in place, it was time to get ChatGPT to get the collision detection working. It rose to the challenge and implemented an AABB collision detection algorithm to handle the task with precision. AABB stands for Axis Aligned Bounding Box, which is one of the simplest ways to detect collision between two squares. This is why we had the falling object class spin its own graphic rather than its entire container, because I was hoping ChatGPT would actually use this collision detection logic. And I'll be honest, the first time that I saw the player and object collide with each other, I got excited because I knew that was going to lead into our next set of features, which was scoring, lives, and of course, death. According to the game design document, our little ship would start with a generous 3 lives. We used ChatGPT to create a class that would track both the player score and the lives, but I held off on letting it integrate it into the game state itself. I wanted to make sure the class was top-notch before letting our AI buddy potentially complicate an already intricate and massive game state system. Once I gave the logic a thumbs up, we instructed ChatGPT to create some snazzy text objects for the lives and score, then integrate our new class into the game. It took some nudging, but ChatGPT had the system running. We even padded some zeros in front of the score for that sweet, sweet arcade nostalgia. One of the last features to conquer for a complete experience was the game over screen. My first prompt to ChatGPT for this task was to have it create a game over screen and freeze all the objects in the background, then have a button that allowed the player to return back to the menu so they could try again. But ChatGPT's initial solution to stop the entire application from functioning was taken a bit too literally from my prompts, which was definitely not what I had in mind. However, we got the game over screen working and fed the revised code back into the prompt, and just like that, we had a functioning game that players could return to and relaunch as many times as their space-loving hearts desired. I'm amazed by how much ChatGPT and Midjourney have accomplished. It's also incredible that we now have a game that's not only functional, but also genuinely fun to play. But I have to admit, I did have to roll up my sleeves and put in a fair bit of work myself. And while these technologies have come an insanely long way, it's not at a point where someone without a solid understanding of programming could create a game like this. For now, it seems that human expertise is still essential to bring it all together. And while the game may be considered feature complete, I wasn't done just yet. With the goal of injecting more incitement into the game, I focused on smaller improvements. I adjusted the falling frequency of stars and asteroids, enhanced the visibility of the game over screen text by adding a stroke around it, and several other tiny improvements to make Starcatcher a bit more pretty. I wanted to add more features though. Taking inspiration from the original game design document, I used ChatGPT to implement a star catching combo system. It came up with a clever solution for this request, increasing points for consecutive stars caught to reward players, while also resetting the bonus to 0 when a life was lost, keeping them on their toes. And the best part, it did all of this within the score class itself, ensuring there was no interference with the rest of the project. Although I didn't include every gameplay feature ChatGPT pitched in the original design document, such as adaptive difficulties or power-ups, I decided that there was one more feature I really wanted to have, and that was letting players choose their own character. I created 3 more player options in red, green, and purple with the help of Midjourney and cut them out in Photoshop before placing them into the assets folder. However, loading and passing these new graphics from the menu state to the game state and then down to the player object proved to be the most problematic task I had given ChatGPT up to this point. It really exposed the AI's limitations. Instead of just having a play button on the menu, I wanted players to select one of the 4 colors to start the gameplay process. In the end, ChatGPT mainly helped load the graphics into memory, create some variables, and start the passing of the textures from the menu state to the game state, but the rest was left up to me. Each time ChatGPT took a stab at the task, it either cooked up some non-existent functions or undid vital changes elsewhere in the file, or it just couldn't figure out where to put the right code. And after several hours of grappling with the code in ChatGPT, I finally nailed down the feature. After a few quick adjustments to the formatting and spacing of the ships, the players were all set to choose one of the 4 colors and dive into the game. And that's it. After 13 hours of working with ChatGPT and Midjourney, I had finally got to see what they were truly capable of. Now, they didn't do everything for me. I still had to put in a decent amount of work myself, but for the mundane tasks and little intricacies, ChatGPT was a lifesaver, figuring things out faster than I could have on my own. With more practice, I believe I could complete this project even quicker by better understanding how to word my inputs into the prompt for the AI. Hell, I even used ChatGPT to help write the script for this video. There's no denying that AI is a groundbreaking technology, and tools like ChatGPT and Midjourney are just the beginning. I highly encourage you to dive in and start your own project and experiment with these amazing tools that are being developed. With hundreds of them emerging every week for various purposes, there's so much to discover. I have tons of videos planned for this channel, all focused on exploring different pieces of technology like these and pushing their limits. As for the ongoing debate of whether or not these technologies will ultimately harm or help society, only time will tell. Personally, I've loved witnessing the breakthroughs and advancements in technology so far, and I can't wait to see what the future holds. I had a blast working on this project for my first video for Hacky Things, and I can't wait to do more. I hope you enjoyed watching, and since I'm a YouTuber now, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification button. You can find the GitHub and the link to play Starcatcher in the description below. Don't hesitate to leave a comment, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you have about this project. Keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and I'll see you next time.